Good morning. Good morning, everyone. You are welcome to the second day and the third session of our Palestine Symposium. We are very happy to have you here. This session is a very meaningful and special session from my perspective. You can ask why. I just want to make a 5-minute introduction to the discussion in order to give you an idea why we wanted to design this kind of meeting in which we are handling the daily life resistances of the Palestinian people. This session is specifically dedicated to these kind of resistances. And why it is important? Because generally in political science discipline or political sociology discipline, we are handling big entities, political parties, states, social movements which have millions of members and so effective in their countries, etc., etc. So we are generally talking about power and power strategies, which are designing and shaping societies to which they belong. Ama this session, arkadaşlar, it will be a little bit different from these kinds of macro discussions about world politics or social movements politics. On the contrary, me and my friends will be trying to handle the ordinary, common people's resistances in their ordinary daily life activities. These people are generally not yelling big slogans, sometimes have no vehicles of power in their hands, but still, with this powerlessness, they have the capacity to resist and they have the capacity to force states to take some decisions in favor of these masses. So it is a very, I can call probably a very magical power in the powerlessness. This session will be the discussion about these kinds of resistances. So we'll try to discuss about very interesting specific cases at the same time. And we will continue to discuss this issue with you, inshallah. And in sociology, I wanted to make a reminder to the sociology students, especially, we are generally talking about these issues in the daily life sociology discussions, and especially in the offerings of Henri Lefebvre and Michel de Certeau. Also, you can handle this session as an example of their discussions, of their analyses about the power of the powerless. I'm not using the term weak. I'm using the term powerless especially in order to emphasize the importance of this power in powerlessness. So we are, inshallah, hosting 4 guests today. One of them now is on Zoom. He is waiting. I want to make a small announcement about him, and then we will start, inshallah. Our first guest is Kerim Kurt from Birzeit University. He's making very interesting studies and giving very interesting speeches in relation with this power of the powerlessness. He is active in the political science department and generally examines the dialectical relationships between the development of the monitoring and control systems, especially in the Zionist prisons, and the escapes and the attempted escapes made by the Palestinian prisoners. He is handling, maybe in a Foucaultian sense, he is handling the carceral system of the Zionist Israel, and try to show us how ordinary people is finding their way to escape from all these, how can I say, pressures supposed to them by the Zionist regime. And one of his other fields of interest is the rise of the far right and the populist right in the Israeli. And today he will give us a speech in some related topics. Welcome, Kerim. Can you hear us?
Yes, welcome and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm honored to be participant in the fabulous symposium.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for us to have you here. The floor is yours, Kerim. Please go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As you mentioned, but I don't think I'm gonna speak about the Israeli prisons. I will speak about the daily resistance.
Yes, we know. Please go on.
Yes. I will talk about daily resistance of the Palestinian people, especially in the West Bank, and discuss some of the types or patterns of the popular resistance, which the Palestinians, young and people in general, have used to face the Israeli or Zionist settlement project. First of all, I would like to point out that the Palestinian people and the West Bank in particular face an existential threat, as you know. The West Bank has been under Israeli occupation since 1967. Since that time, the occupation authorities have been practicing policies aimed at seizing the entire territory of the West Bank and annexing it to Israeli sovereignty through land expropriation and building settlements and settlement outposts. But the main obstacle facing this project is the presence of the Palestinian people in their land, which is the same obstacle that faced the Zionist colonial project from its beginnings. Therefore, the Zionist colonial policies also aim to empty the land of its Palestinian owners as much as possible, based on the famous Zionist principle, more land, less Arab. However, the Palestinians have always these policies in various ways and means, starting from armed resistance to popular resistance, protest, demonstration, and other forms of resistance. In this presentation, I will discuss some of the popular resistance tactics that have occurred in recent years. But due to many circumstances, these tactics and patterns were not destined to continue and develop, which we will explain later. But one of the striking forms of resistance that occurred in the recent years was the establishment of temporary Palestinian villages in areas threatened by settlement. As example, in 2013, the village of Bab al-Shams, or the door of the sun, to translate it, was established in the area known as E1 between Jerusalem and the Ma'ali Adumim settlement. This event was followed by the establishment of a number of other villages in different places, such as Bab al-Karama, Kanaan, Ahfad Yunus, and others. However, this experience didn't destined to last, and the occupation forces attacked and evacuated these villages. But the Palestinian people continued to resist settlement by various means, especially popular demonstration and protest against settlement outposts. In 2021, the youth of the Palestinian village Beta near Nablus adopted a new pattern or type to confront the settlement outpost that was established on their village lands. This type was known as night confusion or nighttime disruption. in Arabic, we called it Irbak Layli. We can translate to night confusion or nighttime disruption. This type of resistance arose in the Gaza Strip during the popular Return March, which began in March 2018, to demand the right of return and break the Israeli siege imposed on the Gaza Strip. Night confusion is a resistance pattern run by a group of young men that aims to confuse the occupation forces and put pressure on them and on the Zionist settlers on the settlement around the Gaza Strip. As the early hours of the night arrived, some young men began beating drums and broadcasting songs, while others released burning balloons and firecracks toward the occupation forces and the Zionist settlements around the Gaza Strip, with the aim to disrupt the occupation forces near the border fence. And these means of resistance played a role, an important role in pressuring the occupation government to ease the siege on the Gaza Strip, and continued to be used in the Gaza Strip at different times according to the necessity and circumstances. Later, this experience was applied in the West Bank. The night confusion in the West Bank activity in the West Bank began at the end of the Saif al-Quds battle in mid-2021. The youth of Beta village developed nighttime disruption tactics through experimentation, observation, and progression. In the first day, the activities were limited to setting fire on rubber tires near the settlers. Then, just a minute. Then new tactics developed, such as use of horns to make annoying and strong sounds, which they blare in the direction of the settlement outpost. Alongside them comes a group specialized in providing logistical support to young men, which can be called the incubator of the young men of these resistant groups. And it works to providing food and water and drinks to young demonstrators and journalists in the area of Beta village. And as soon as darkness fell on the village of Beta, loudspeakers in the mosques would play the Quran, then the takbirs and shouts of hundreds of young men from the Beta village rise toward the Aviatar outpost, which was established on their village lands. The activities also include closing the side roads leading to the settlement outposts, using rocks, obstacles, or creating holes in the roads. These ongoing activities forced the occupation authorities to evacuate the settlement outpost. And this was considered a success for the night confusion tactics. Therefore, the experiment spread to some other villages. But anyway, the experience didn't last long and quickly faded away. Since the spread of popular resistance in general in the West Bank faced several obstacles, I will refer to some of them. The most important, or one of the important obstacles, the absence of an effective and organized plan and work programs for the activity of popular resistance. And second, the absence of a unified vision among the institutions and committees that practice popular resistance. Thirdly, the large gap between resistance activists and political leadership, especially with regard to strategy, tactics, and national goals, and the ineffectiveness of official and popular media in following up and highlighting popular resistance activities. More importantly, it's the prevalence of individualistic values among Palestinian society. And this liberal individualism leads to the isolation of Palestinians from national issues and collective challenges. These and many other obstacles limit the possibility of turning popular resistance into an effective strategy in facing the Zionist settlement project in West Bank. But anyway, more 2 years ago, the armed resistance began to return to the West Bank in semi-organized manner, and it has now gained solid pace in some areas in the North and West Bank, despite all the challenges it faces. The continuation of the occupation and the expansion of the settlement project will always force the Palestinian to resist in various ways and means. I finish my presentation. Maybe I finish quickly. But to conclude, I have to say...
Yes, please, continue.
To conclude, I would say as long as the occupation remains, resistance will continue to exist and develop, and the presence of the Palestinian people and their steadfastness on their land will remain the most powerful weapon against the Zionist project. Thank you, and this is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kerim. Can you stay with us to take the questions at the end of all the presentations?
Yes.
You will be able to wait with us?
Yes, I will be here.
Thank you very much. I will return to you back again, inshallah, in the Q&A session. Thank you for the presentation, for your contribution. So, dear friends, we are continuing with the guests in the salon. And now, inshallah, Siham Hanım will make her contribution. Siham Feyyad from Bethlehem University. And she's a project manager, a very active intellectual and academician and researcher and director at the same time, who is deeply related with the woman development and women's role in the overall socio-political development of the countries. Women's participation, and she's trying to put some kind of new understanding to encourage inclusivity and gender equity. And she is the board member of the Jerusalem Center for Women's Studies, for Women and Women's Studies. So, Siham, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for this opportunity to present maybe one aspect of daily resistance, and maybe because I'm a woman, I carry one female aspect of this resistance, and it's a topic that might be a bit not unheard of, but it's very unique to the Palestinian context. And it's about sperm smuggling. This is how that English translation. But we call it in our society ambassadors of freedom, where the whole thing started in 2012. This was the first case of smuggling sperm of a prisoner and having artificial insemination in a center to the wife of that prisoner, where she delivered two healthy babies in 2012. And this was the first case of such parameters that were broken and define a new meaning of freedom, where mostly prisoners who are facing maybe 1, 2, 3 life sentences with no possibility of release can also extend their life through their children. And this is the whole concept of this to the Palestinian society. At first it was a bit critical because it's a new thing. And then there were legalities and sharia and how halal is it. So it has a lot of conditions. So it has, there needs to be the woman's full consent to do so. There has to be like a legal marriage certificate, of course. 2 witnesses, one of each family, like the husband's family and the wife's family, a certified center where this is done. So all the measures are taken to make sure that this is a healthy, halal, legal way, at least from our point of view, a legal way to have a child in this condition. One very important condition also is the declaration. To have this known, to be released in media sources so people know that this is the son of this man and there is no reputation damage to the mother, for example, or the child in the future. Of course, after the announcement of this happens after the success of this process and after they make sure that the mother is healthy and the baby is healthy, and then they do the declaration. Of course, the father in prison will be punished for doing so because it is considered illegal within the prison's parameter. But you can see the poster. These are children, some of the photos, and some of them have 4 children in one time. And it is a form of resistance because on one side of the photo or the poster, you see an Israeli soldier wearing a T-shirt where it says 1 shot, 2 kills. So they aim for the pregnant mothers. And it's kind of a demographic competition where they try to lessen our numbers and we try to increase them. Anyways, this is the whole, the context where this is happening, but there are other aspects, of course, social and psychological, to the mother and the child. The mother, and I speak as a woman, it's really hard to be a single mom in our societies, specifically in our societies, but to do so by choice and with little chance of having your partner next to you is the ultimate sacrifice, I would think. And to be for that child, the mother and the father, is another way of resistance and bringing up children who carry the story, the narrative, the real narrative of Palestinian people. And even sometimes they don't even have the chance to visit their fathers at the prison. I don't want to talk too much, but maybe a little story, and then if anyone has questions afterwards, then I can answer them. There was she's a friend of mine, she's an ex-female prisoner, and her son is now in prison. When they were chasing her son, he was caught in this house, empty house, and they know because they have cameras with heat sensors and everything, and they brought his mother to the site. And they gave her the speaker and asked her to convince him to deliver himself, to bring himself to the army, or they will release the dogs on him. So they gave her a choice. Either she helps arrest him, or they let the dogs at him. So she takes the speaker and she talks to her son, and she convinces him, and he comes and they take him, and he's now in prison for a couple of life sentences. So small chances of her seeing him again outside of prison, but he's alive. And this is something that a Palestinian mother would do. And she was joking. She went to visit him, and he had a long beard, and she asked him, I told you, last time I told you to shave off this beard. And he said, Mom, last time I listened to you, look where I ended up. So they joke about it, they laugh, and this is how it is, how life is. I'm not, on the position of this process, the smuggling of sperm and doing the insemination and bringing up a child. I don't know if this is taking away some of the rights of that child and putting a responsibility on him or on her to carry even before they had the power of choice. But I think this is a Palestinian thing. Power of choice is not always ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siham, for your contributions. And we are continuing with Halit Hoca, Halid El-Avaisi. Hocam is a member of the Social Sciences University of Ankara and member of the Faculty of Theology and associate professor in the history of Islam, ana bilim dalı kind of thing in Turkish. And you are, hocam, the general manager of a center or a research academy, which is centered on the Islamic Jerusalem studies. And at the same time, you are publishing a journal in relation with this topic. And so you are making very precious studies, making contributions to this field, Islamic Jerusalem concept. And here he will make his presentation to us. Thank you very much for being here. Please go on, Hocam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I would like to thank the chair for her kind words and also Ibn Khaldun University for organizing this timely conference. What I'll be talking about is settler colonial violence against holy places and the Palestinian resistance towards that. As you are aware, the Israeli occupation forces has destroyed in the current attack on Gaza hundreds of mosques and churches have been destroyed, some of them completely wiped out, and some of them are very ancient, over 1,000 years old, have been wiped off the map of Gaza. But I'll be concentrating on the West Bank in particular, where settlers are actively, continuously attacking holy places. And I would like to start with the their attacks against the Christians, and then I'll move to the Muslim holy sites, and particularly I'll focus on Al-Aqsa Mosque. We see an escalation against attacks against holy places in the West Bank and also inside the 1948 land. And these attacks are on the rise, and they have been going on for quite a long time. Some of the churches that were attacked is Mar Ilyas Monastery. And what happens is the youth stand up against the settler mobs and try to prevent them, and even trying to even call the Israeli police, who do not turn up when they are called. Greek Orthodox Church, the Maronite Church in Acre, in Akka, a monastery in Jaffa, and Father Samir Zaknoun, he said, talking about some of these attacks, is barbarically storming Christian sites. And I'll quote him directly, in which he says, Christian churches have become daily targets for attacks by settler gangs, who are clearly taking advantage of the extremist government, the Israeli political hierarchy towards Muslim and Christians in the country. A report published in 2021 by Haaretz says that the Israeli police closed 9 out of 10 cases investigating hate crimes against mosques and churches. And from 2018 to 2020, saying they are unable to identify the perpetrators. And you've heard recently something very interesting. Jews going by churches, spitting at Christians or spitting at the churches. And this is something, when Itamar Ben-Gvir tried to explain it, he said, this is an ancient Jewish tradition that brings blessings to those who will spit at. A statement from a minister trying to justify this vile attacks against Christians is unheard of. The protection of churches, and you will see it also in the case of Al-Aqsa Mosque, is done by both Muslims and Christians. So when churches are attacked, it's not just the Christian youth that stand against the settlers, it is the Muslim and Christian youth that stand together. And you've seen it at Bab al-Aqsa in Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, where Christian youth in Jerusalem joined forces with the Muslims demonstrating against the Israeli attacks at Al-Masjid al-Aqsa and protecting the Muslims while they are praying from the soldiers' attacks. Moving on to attacks on mosques, you have seen a lot of mosques, Israel claiming actually overtaking them completely in many places, and particularly some of the maqams in Jerusalem and also across the West Bank. But I would like to concentrate on two examples that are very clear. One is Al-Ibrahimi Mosque in Al-Khalil, and the second one is Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is today the center of the conflict. Even Tufan Al-Aqsa was named after Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa because of the attacks that were taking place. You just saw before 7th of October, the attacks on Hanad al-Halawani, the attacks on Aida Sidawi, the attacks on Muslim murabitat, women standing at the gates of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa by both settlers. You saw how Aida Sidawi was kicked in the face by Israeli settlers and spat on and pushed around, not just by the settlers, but also done also by the Israeli occupation forces. This is not something new. A lot of people think that this is something that started with the current government, but this is quite. It's been going on since before 1967, since 1948. Lots when Palestine was occupied, when the British withdrew, and the Nakba in 1948. You saw a lot of mosques were overtaken by. Some of them turned into stables, some of them turned into pubs, some of them turned into, this is post-48, but I'll concentrate on the two examples that I'm mentioning is post-1967. The first one is Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa was occupied on 7th of June, 1967. Israeli occupation forces raised the Israeli flag on top of the Dome of the Rock. The chief rabbi suggested that we should blow up the Dome of the Rock and Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa amidst the war. And no one will take notice of it. As we see today in Gaza, hundreds of mosques are completely destroyed. Some of them are, actually most of them are older than the Israeli state itself. But in 1967, part of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was taken by the Israeli occupation forces, and that is Al-Buraq Wall. Al-Buraq Wall, prior to the 19th century, had no holiness to the Jews. Today, it is the holiest site, quote unquote, to the Jews around the world. Israeli Zionist and Jewish sources clearly say that pre the Ottoman period, this wall had no significance. However, they attached certain significance to it. And this is not just something that happened with Al-Buraq wall in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. This has happened with, and you'll see this in an Israeli human rights report, talking about the deal of the century. Many of the so-called holy sites for Jews in Jerusalem are made up. They do not have any holiness. However, this holiness, like with Al-Buraq wall, the western wall of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, has now become a national and religious symbol for Judaism. In 1969, a Christian Zionist, not a Jewish Zionist, a Christian Zionist. And today, Christian Zionism is a driving force for many of the attacks happening in Palestine. Many of the tunnels that are dug underneath the Masjid Al-Aqsa are sponsored by Christian Zionists of the United States. And lots of settler organizations are involved in this point in particular, and funded by Christian Zionists. In 1969, a Christian Zionist, with the help of some Jewish Zionists, managed to enter Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and burn part of Al-Aqsa Mosque as part of a fulfillment of a prophecy that the temple will be built on site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa within 4 years after 1967. And this is forcing the hand of God. There has been tens of attacks by Israeli occupation forces on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa since 1967 and by settlers. And Al-Aqsa massacre happened in 1990. Al-Aqsa massacre, where 29 Palestinians were killed and martyred inside Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa with hundreds wounded, was because of Jewish Zionist extremist settlers wanting to put the foundation stone for the building of the temple on the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, the Temple Mount Faithful, where in October 1990, to correct what I said as 29, it was 23 killed and 150 wounded. This is beside smaller attacks that have continued before and after. So an extremist Zionist temple group wants to put a cornerstone for the building of the temple on the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and the Muslims are the ones that pay the price. This actually, even before the creation of the State of Israel, happened at Al-Buraq wall in 1929, when the British were occupying Palestine, and this idea of wanting to share the Muslim holy space and to claim it to be a Jewish one, as has been done with other places. The example of the Ibrahimi Mosque is a Jewish extremist settler. Today, the inspiration for Itamar Ben-Gvir and many Jewish settlers, a doctor, Baruch Goldstein. In the month of Ramadan, we're just 2 days later, it will be the anniversary of this massacre. He enters Al-Masjid Al-Ibrahimi in Hebron in the morning prayer in the month of Ramadan, and while the Muslims make sujood, he shoots them and kills 29 and injures hundreds. A settler enters a mosque, kills 29 Palestinians on the spot, and Israel, what does Israel do? Israel, he's become a heroic figure to the settler groups. Not only that, Israel closes the mosque for 6 months, And when it reopens the mosque is divided into two. 60% for Jews, 40% for Muslims. The reason I'm giving this example in particular is because this is exactly what in the Israeli Knesset was discussed to be applied for Al-Aqsa Mosque many times during this discussion, particularly with this right-wing government. Just last year, in 2023, 48,200 settlers have entered and stormed Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa throughout just 2023. You have seen the attacks last Ramadan against Muslim worshippers in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Has this happened anywhere else in the world? The whole world would be, you saw when a synagogue was attacked in Paris, the whole world leaders, including Turkey's, at that time, Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoğlu, joined forces with all the leaders of the world, walking shoulder to shoulder against this. This has happened in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and in the Ibrahimi Mosque many times. And very disturbingly, the world is silent at this. Attacks are not just against mosques and against churches, also graves. And you see in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, attacks by settlers against the graveyards and also by the Israeli establishment, in which Israel built a museum of tolerance over the graves of the Muslims that it destroyed. And it called it, ironically, the Museum of Tolerance. How do the Palestinians respond to this, and how do they resist this? You see this. You saw this in Bab al-Asbat, where the Palestinians, when Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was closed for 2 weeks, this concept of sumud and resistance is incredible. It started with the Israelis putting these metal detectors at the gates of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Also, it put cameras, and the decision that was made there on the spot, we will not enter Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa until these are removed. And this resistance grew. Israel tried to crush it immediately. The more Israel tried to crush, the more the resistance grew stronger. And this is where everyone, even those who do not pray, this is very interesting, even those Muslims who do not pray, even including Christians, they came, and we will not allow Israel to go ahead with overtaking Al-Aqsa. And you heard Father Manuel Msellam, and you've heard many of the priests saying an attack on Al-Aqsa is an attack on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is how and they stood together against this Israeli aggression. And what you see was a grassroots movement that was not directed by anyone, and even the religious figures in Jerusalem had to go along with, because the Awqaf, the Jordanian Awqaf, wanted to even the guards of Al-Aqsa to enter Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa with the gates. The people refused, and the head of the Awqaf then even threatened to fire these people if they did not enter. They resisted, and they stood their ground until Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Israel was forced to remove the barriers, remove the cameras, and this was a massive victory. And one gate Israel insisted on keeping closed, which was Bab Hutta, and the decision was made, we will not enter except from Bab Hutta. And Israel threw gas and sound bombs, grenades against the people there. Eventually, Israel opened all the gates of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and the people entered. And this was a very symbolic victory for Palestinians. These little victories actually give people a lot of hope in terms of crushing this occupation, this illegal occupation. Israel has nothing, according to international law. Israel is an occupation force in Jerusalem and also in the West Bank. Palestinians see it as occupying all of Palestine. This is something that most of the Palestinians, even today, living in Gaza, are actually refugees from the 1948. Another symbolic victory was Bab al-Rahma, which Jordan, the Jordanian Awqaf, with the Israelis, have agreed that this is the way that they will move forward. The people there insisted and they fought, and there was a lock on the gate by the Israelis, and they broke that lock, and then it was replaced by a Jordanian lock. And this game that is being played here, the people in the Maqadisa, the people of Bayt al-Maqdis of Jerusalem, this is not something that they will let go, and they insisted and they broke the second lock until they entered Bab al-Rahma, which Israel was, as Sheikh Akram Sabri, the Imam of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, has clearly mentioned that Israel is planning to turn this to be part of a synagogue. The last point that I would like to wrap the discussion with is part of the deal of the century. What is many of the discussion that is happening today in Gaza, but our discussion is not focused on that, but the idea of unarming the resistance in Gaza was already clearly mapped out in the deal of the century, Trump's deal of the century. And with holy places, it is particularly Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is something I'd like to quote from it directly. The text sounds very inclusive. However, it is, in the memoirs of Jared Kushner, he clearly writes that the night before the deal of the century was announced, he was sitting with Netanyahu going through the last text. So this is a text that was drafted with Israel's vision for Bayt al-Maqdis and for Al-Aqsa in particular. It says, and I quote here, "Jerusalem holy sites should remain open and available for peaceful worshippers," and underline peaceful worshippers, "and tourists of all faiths." This is a mosque. People of every faith should be permitted to pray on the Temple Mount, using the Zionist Israeli terminology, and then / Haram al-Sharif, in a manner that is fully respectful to their religion. Let me read it again without me interrupting, and then I will comment on it. Jerusalem's holy sites should remain open and available for peaceful worshippers and tourists of all faiths. People of every faith should be permitted to pray on the Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, in a manner that is fully respectful to their religion, taking into account the times of each religion's prayers and holidays, as well as other religious factors. End of quote. What is incredible here is Israel wants to turn the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa into a multi-faith site, turning a mosque into, the Christians have no interest in praying in the area of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, like the Muslims have no interest in praying in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And this was 1400 years ago when Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Muslim Khalif, entered. He particularly, even when the Patriarch asked him to pray in the church, he said, "I will not pray because this will, down the line, Muslims will turn around and say this is where Umar prayed and we would like to pray here." Conflict prevention was something at the focus of the Muslim vision of inclusivity. However, what this is suggesting is Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa should be open here in particular to Jews during their holidays, exactly what is being applied in the Ibrahimi Mosque in Al-Khalil. During Jewish holidays, even the Israeli president participated in the dancing and in the music worship inside the Ibrahimi mosque in Hebron. What is aimed, and this is today the center of the conflict, and you saw this on the 28th of Ramadan with the sword Sayf al-Quds, when in the month of Ramadan, worshippers were attacked, and the settlers wanted to do this march around Jerusalem, around the old city, and they insisted to do this. And the people, the Jerusalemites, the Maqadisa in al-Masjid al-Aqsa, called upon two places. They called upon Gaza, and you heard them chant, Mishan Allah, Ya Gaza, Yallah, for God's sake, Gaza, come to our help. And the second place they hoped that would come to their aid was Turkey. These are the two places, because from a long time ago, the Palestinians have given up hope on any Arab states to come to their aid, unfortunately. And Gaza gave Israel until 6 p.m. to release all the youth that were arrested in al-Masjid al-Aqsa that day until 6 p.m. and to withdraw its forces from al-Masjid al-Aqsa. Israel did not. So rockets were fired from Gaza, and the march that was going to go around the old city was cancelled. And this changed. This was the first time that Gaza would come, and the attack on Gaza and the brutality of the attack. And you hear the people today coming from underneath the rubble saying, Kullu fida al-Aqsa. All of it is our sacrifice towards al-Aqsa. This al-Aqsa being at the heart of the Palestinian resistance, a symbolic of Palestinian resistance, is extremely important. You saw this last Ramadan, the Ramadan in between, and unfortunately, what Israel is planning for Al-Aqsa this Ramadan, you have heard clearly Itamar bin Gavir and also Netanyahu approving the restrictions that will take place. This will not just ignite the situation once more. The attacks on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa against the Muslim women prior to 7th of October, you heard the resistance fighters clearly saying on the 7th of October, making reference to the attack on Muslim women at Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. This was clearly seen in many of the videos. And what Israel, with this extremist government, is planning for this coming Ramadan will explode the situation beyond anything. What Christian and Jewish Zionists like to see is not just the incursions inside the Masjid al-Aqsa, and not just that they would like to pray inside the Masjid al-Aqsa, which is now allowed. You've seen video recorded by settlers inside the Masjid al-Aqsa cursing the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You saw Itamar bin Gavir going inside saying this is ours and we will not give it up. You saw these statements and where we are heading seems to be that Al-Aqsa is again the center of this conflict. And if Israel goes ahead with banning Muslims' entry into their holy sites, allowing spatial and temporal division of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, this will go beyond anything that anyone would expect. And we say in Arabic, Israel is playing with fire. And this will backlash against Israel and its supporters, unfortunately. I would like to end by saying that Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa is not just a Palestinian mosque. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is not a Palestinian church. It belongs to both the Muslim Ummah and the Christian Ummah around the world, and their voices need to be heard in order to protect these holy sites and to protect the people of Palestine and what is dear to them. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Hocam, thank you for this perfect presentation. The contribution you made. Normally, we will have Mustafa Barghouti with us at the beginning of the session, but we couldn't contact him. I think he's not here still. So we will continue among us, but before passing to the Q&A session, I want to make a small contribution to the discussions, especially to Hocam's contributions, because when I was listening to Halit Hoca, I remembered one of the perfect and lovely books of John Berger, Hold Everything Dear. In Turkish, its Turkish translation is Kıymetini Bil Her Şeyin. And the subtopic of this book is Dispatches on Survival and Resistance. And his personal experiences with the Palestine and Palestinian people, and evaluations, of course, as an activist, as a man who resisted all through his life. Even if he is not a Muslim, he was always pro-Islamic, this kind of struggles, Islamic or generally Palestinian. In this book, there was a sentence, I never forgot it after I read. He says, we talked about powerlessness. He says, if the people have nothing to struggle with, no tools in their hands, they generally put their fragile bodies in front of the guns and choose martyrdom. And with this choice, with this very radical choice, they took all the ethical superiority from the hands of the enemy and blamed them, put the shame on their shoulders, and ethically win the struggle, ethically win the war. And after I read this, I always, again and again, I remembered this word and thought about its meaning, the ethical superiority. By being a martyr, gaining all the ethical superiority issue, bence, especially in the 20th century arkadaşlar, showed to us by the Palestinian people again and again. Yani their resistance, yani perfect resistance, ununderstandable from the worldly perspective, is going on, is continuing, and they have the ethical superiority. But of course, ethical superiority must be backed up by some kind of rainbow coalition. We call it a rainbow coalition. Yani aslında hocam gave good examples. In any case, sometimes you have to resist face to face with people from other religions. Sometimes different social movements with different understandings can back up this social movement and try to give their physical and moral and material support to them. So I think we must ask to ourselves, yesterday this question is asked again, what are we doing? Yani Palestinians are doing what they must do. But the question, what we are doing, must be asked again and again to ourselves. According to me, and çünkü we are in good condition, in our hotbeds and working in our offices, and everything is okay for us. Ama an international kind of resistance must be raised, as I understand from all these very important presentations. And different levels of resistances must come together and support each other. We talked about daily resistance of the women, daily resistance of the young people, daily resistance of the maybe Turkish and American and other countries' peoples, but different levels of lobbying kind of resistance, the support of social movements and the support of the states, of course, must be brought together, inshallah, if we want to reach a better condition, a well-being for all our brothers and sisters all over the world. So I wanted to make this small contribution. We can continue with a Q&A session because Mustafa Bey will not be able to join us. So we are waiting for your contributions. We are waiting for your questions. The floor is yours, please. Ayşe'cim, can you get the microphone, please?
Okay. I'm Aisha Sayed. I'm a doctoral student at Ibn Khaldun University. Parts of my question have already been raised by Alef Hoja. I would just like to understand, is there a way, a possibility of how these pockets of resistance could be connected and evolved into an international resistance against oppression? You've already talked about strategies and tactics, about power and powerlessness. Being a student of Alef Hoja, I would like to ask how these networks of hope and outrage, how they could be channelized into a global movement for positive social change, and what can be the role of spaces such as city centers and sensitized masses such as us in the absence of visible leadership. Thank you very much.
To whom the question is coming?
Hojam, whoever would like to answer.
Okay, both of our guests maybe can.
And there's always also a guest online.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Thank you for that question. It's been on my mind personally, and a lot of women working on the ground, and global networking is very much the way to assure solidarity based on factual solidarity, as Dr. Mads yesterday said. So within Palestine, we are working on establishing different networks that are based on different fields of work, of engagement with these women, like ex-prisoners, economic leaders, but all women, so women networks. And we're trying to connect to global networks, whether in Turkey, whether in Europe. Now new countries emerge during this solidarity stream in this current war. So, and one is academic also, that has to do with women research. So at least on the women's side, this is what we're trying to do on the ground. I don't know if this answers the question from that point.
With resistance and making it into an international, taking it to the international scope, actually we see a lot of this taking place with different groups coming, particularly from the Western world, to the West Bank. And you have seen examples even earlier in Gaza, but now these are rather limited. But in terms of the West Bank, with all the restriction that Israel puts in place, a lot of international activists manage to still get into these places. But there, you've seen example of Rachel Corrie standing against. I think the international resistance movement need to take it up a notch. I think where we are standing now, just documenting what is happening is no longer sufficient. I think wonderful examples were coming from Gaza, with doctors going there and being part of this. Actually, it makes this this is not just their struggle, this is also our struggle, and your example is inspiring to many around the world. I think in the West Bank, there's been lots of discussions I've heard in Turkey, particularly with the planned attacks against Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in the month of Ramadan, is for Muslims to go and be part of the ribat inside Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. The problem with this, after the case that South Africa has started, South Africans who used to go there in their hundreds in the month of Ramadan are now banned from entering. So they're being turned back. On the other side, Israel plays this game of people from Turkey going to Al-Aqsa through the tourist companies. So what they would play is that they will only give an Israeli citizen can come to Turkey without a visa, can get a visa in the airport for 3 months and can extend it indefinitely. But a Turkish citizen who would like to go and visit Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa can only get a visa for 5 days, and they are restricted in what they do unless they have a diplomatic or a semi-diplomatic passport. And Israel has been playing this game for a very long time. So it restricts, because the people who would like to go there are not going there as tourists. They would like to go there and be in solidarity, be part of the ribat in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, be part of this. And Israel, I have seen this with my eyes, many even Western activists are turned around by Israel on the border. But I think if the numbers go up, the numbers that we're talking about now are in their hundreds. If you would like to take this peaceful protest or peaceful activism up a notch, it has to go, the numbers have to go up in their thousands. I think today we have a massive opportunity to do this with Gaza in particular, through sending the Freedom Flotilla to break the siege on Gaza. I don't think there is any other way possible to end the suffering except by challenging Israel. And what South Africa has succeeded is to challenge Israel in the international court. What I think NGOs can succeed is to challenge Israel in international water and try to break the siege on Gaza. You have to challenge Israel as just protest wherever we are don't seem to be paying sufficient results. And I think the international resistance against Zionism needs to take this strategy up a notch and be able to challenge Israel at every opportunity, wherever it may be.
Can I add something?
Of course.
I mean, I do respect what has been said, but I think the challenge that grassroots and civilians and activists should do is to challenge their own governments. Because we see the solidarity on the ground everywhere. And it's massive, but it's not doing anything, because the very few that govern the world are okay with what's going on, with collateral damage to them. So I think it's not about finding a way to go there, but making it hard for the policymakers in every country to say yes to what Israel is doing. Make your own leaders chase the change and force Israel to change, because this is where your influence is. Every person matters in their own country more than they do, and especially Israel. I saw friends of mine strip searched at the airport because they're not even they're coming for a job, but because they're supposedly, or they might be supporting Palestine, they make it really hard they don't tell them, no, don't come, but they make it really hard for them to go for 5 hours of interrogation, strip search, especially women. So, there is a Syrian saying called صحيح لا تاكل مقسوم لا تاكل وصحيح لا تقسم وكل لا تشبع. So a loaf, a loaf of bread, don't break the unbroken, and don't eat from the broken, and eat until you're full, which is you cannot eat. So they give you no option, but they tell you that you have options. So I think our responsibility, each one towards their own policymakers, more than.
And zaten otherwise there is some kind of hani conformism of Palestinian resistance kind of thing is raising. Yani hani without taking any responsibility and without putting your hands under the stone, you are happy with your resistance kind of activities in the daily life. Yani I think it is aslında a challenge to us at the same time. Buyurun.
Thank you for a very enlightening discussion. I think we have to do both. I totally agree we have to step it up a few notches according to the situation, of course, but I think also that the activism on the ground in occupied Palestine has to be combined with what is our duty to change and to impose changes in our governments. And I'd just like to tell you that on the Norwegian side, we probably have the oldest solidarity movement for Palestine in Europe. It started in the early 60s. We had young doctors going to Jordan during Black September to support the Palestinian Fedayins up in the caves to patch them up when they were wounded. And these young doctors came back to Norway and told their story. And you always believe the story more when it's told by somebody you know who has been there and seen it and lived it, being strip searched in Ben Gurion or being together with the Palestinians in Gaza during bombing. That story has another weight, carries another imposing energy than having read about the atrocities in the newspaper. So we have had two important sources of this first-hand knowledge. One are the UN soldiers, peacekeeping forces that Norway has provided both to Gaza in the 50s and then to South Lebanon during the UNIFIL time. For decades, Norwegian young soldiers would go with the blue casquette to uphold some sort of UN-installed peace. And studies have shown that they went down 80 to 90% pro-Israeli, and they came home 98% pro-Palestinian. Because the point is that reality tells you what truth is. So going to Palestine, going to the West Bank, and what we have done in particular is to send groups of young Norwegians to the camps in Lebanon, in particular Rashidiyah and Bosh Parashna and Sabra and Shatila. And they have been working as English teachers and kindergarten teachers and, sports instructors, whatever, and stayed for the better part of 2 or 3 months. And in the formative years when you're young, reality really influences you. They come home, they tell their family, their friends, whatever, and they became glued to the cause. I am one of them. I went to Beirut in 81 first time as a young doctor. I saw the bombing and the siege in 82 when I worked as a young doctor in West Beirut, closely connected with Abu Ammar, with Abu Shihad, with Fatih Arafat. I met these strong leaders. It made an immense impression on me and it changed my life. So I think this is not sort of a misery tourism. It is a solidarity tourism, or rather a solidarity journey. And I think that the reason why Norway today among the European nations has taken one of the most progressive stances, which doesn't take much because the other European governments, unfortunately, have been on the Israeli side, is that we have a massive pressure going on in Norway as we are speaking. There are demonstrations every day in Norway now, very strong, very articulate. Today, actually, the Norwegian parliament is discussing a motion to stop all types of export of weapons to any allies who could send it on to Israel, because we have unfortunately, a big weapon industry, and they have been establishing a sister company in the United States, which puts together the anti-tank weapons, which is then exported to Israel. And we're trying to close that loophole. So today, the Norwegian government again, the Norwegian parliament again is discussing what is the Norwegian role. And as you may know, Norway did not accept to call Hamas a terrorist organization. They increased their support to humanitarian work after the 7th of October, and they demanded immediate lift of the siege of Gaza. And now they have also refused to defund UNRWA. This is at state level. And in my analysis, this comes as a result of the very strong Norwegian solidarity movement. So I totally agree with you that our job is to do whatever we can in our national arenas to change the attitudes of the governments. And the key place that should happen is, of course, in the United States, where we see massive movements now. And part of that is thanks to the young students and Students for Justice in Palestine, the young Jewish students and so on, pushing every day, gaining more and more support by talking to people. And then at the same time, I agree that we should have some sort of flotilla or some sort of active breaking of the siege. The only state that tried to do that was, as you know, Jordan, when they flew in the first airdrop, which was not coordinated with Israelis. I talked to Queen Rania about that, and I asked specifically, did you coordinate? And she said, no, we informed both parties, but we did not coordinate. And they dropped humanitarian help to the 2 field hospitals they have in Gaza. Later, probably it's been coordinated, but this showed that at state level, it's also possible to break the siege. So I think we have to walk on both feet. We have to increase our activities directly at breaking the siege of Gaza and stopping the atrocities. But my job, first and foremost, is not what I do as a doctor in Gaza. My job, first and foremost, is what I can achieve as an activist in Norway, pushing my Norwegian government to have a more brave and a more pro-Palestinian stance. So we need both. Shukran jazilan.
Thank you very much. Please. Sorry, very sorry. I didn't see you. Can I begin with Hojam? Thank you.
Yes, I just want to ask, being as an academician, do we need to redefine a lot of things? Because I don't know, we have some kind of fear if we define terrorism now, or the act which Israel is doing we came to know about this from last few months, but which is going from so long. Why, as an academician, for example, they're controlling the media, they're controlling internet, everything. So if you, as I, want to write anything related to this, the mental health atrocity happening with Palestinian, my article should be published by those who are already favoring this. They are suppressing the voices. So as an academician, do you think that we need to redefine things? We need to bring more platforms where we can talk about, where we can share those stories. Not only stories, as yesterday doctor said that, they must be backed by research, like solid scientific research. So I think we lack it completely, because of which our voices had been suppressed all the time. And also, like, for example, why we need to fear for that, and how long we are going to send NGOs or aids, humanitarian aid to the Palestine. Why we are not raising voice? This is enough. So when we're going to wake up, and from the academic background, when we're going to write about it freely and use our sources and, like, for example, tell the stories what they are being every day, single day they are living. For example, this, the ma'am shared about how they are working about with pregnant women. I don't think in any part of the world, like, people know about these things in detail. So why, my question is, like, how we can bring a platform as an academician so we can put these stories scientifically, so our generations must know about these. They should not die with time as they are doing. And second thing I want to say that we are going with a psychological process called systematic desensitization. I remember when it started, emotions was high, people was boycotting and all. So how we can sustain this movement constantly so we cannot get used to or, like, suppress this with desensitization? Thank you.
Mads, do you want to add something to the question? Okay.
Thank you. Just a short additional note to my brother. I suggested a term yesterday, evidence-based solidarity. As a doctor, I'm used to evidence-based medicine. I think we need more numbers, more research, more facts, both on the psychosocial, the social, the medical, the epistemic side, the systematics of colonization of Palestine. And may I suggest that we created some sort of an international space, a database, a digital center where you could find sources, peer-reviewed papers published and books on different types of items. And may I suggest that the brilliant Ibn Khaldun University could take a champion's lead in establishing an international source for evidence-based solidarity with Palestine and for the evidence-based struggle against colonization and apartheid. Shukran.
Thank you very much. Maybe if we have time, I don't know, we can take the other questions and one answer session. Perfect. Then zahmet olacak. We have lots of questions, I think. Tamam, we are coming. We can begin from on the left side, and then we can give the microphone and come to the right, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the panelists who actually made us to understand the case better. By the way, I am Ibrahim, PhD student in Institute of Medit from Ibn Khaldun University. And if Khalid is still connected, my question is going to go to him.
Is he connected? Is Khalid connected?
Kerim.
Pardon, Kerim, pardon.
Kerim or Khalid, I'm sorry.
Kerim. Tamam, he's connected, you can
Okay,
answer.
so I think he talked about the popular resistance, particularly in the case of the young people. And this very important part of how the power is just infiltrated in the society, and the society try to answer to it. My question is going to, first of all, before I ask a question, he talked about popular resistance in the case of the demonstration, making strong voices, making takbirs and closing the doors. And my question is that, are these methods enough to stop the Israeli powers, or push them back, or hinder them, or actually make Israel actually more angry? And lastly, Hocam, you just talked about it. I didn't think about it when I was writing my question. Ali Hocam, you said that, I was thinking that why these people, although there is a very strong actually military power in front of them, why they are just, let's say, they're putting less of effort. In this case, you said that ethical superiority, I think, is very important concept to understand why these people steal, although there is a very big power actually that every day fight with them. And in the case of Khalid, what he thinks about that, is that giving them just ethical superiority, or does it actually make any physical change on the ground? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hanımefendi. Microphone. You can ask your question.
Çok teşekkür ederim. Bu bilgiler için çok farklı kanallardan yeni bilgiler öğrendik. Benim sorum Siham Fayaz beyefendiye.
No, Siham Hanım, Halit Hocam.
Evet.
Which one, Halit Hoca?
Evet, Halit Hoca'ya. Okay. Şimdi burada şunu ifade etti. Yahudilerin Mescid-i Aksa'da ayin yapması sadece orayı işgal anlamına gelmiyor. Aslında farklı dinlerin ritüellerine de saygı duymadıkları. Bu dinler arası diyalog söylemini çağrıştırdı. Burada sadece işgal değil, farklı dinlere, kutsallara saygı duymamak, ritüellerini kabul etmemek ve sanki geçirgen, flu bir alan oluşturmak gibi küresel bir sanki söylemi de çağrıştırdı. Bu konuda görüşlerini merak ediyorum. İkinci bir sorum, oradaki Hristiyanların Mescid-i Aksa'yı koruma ve Müslüman gençleri koruma noktasındaki çabaları, bu sanki dünya kamuoyuna yeterince aktarılmıyor. Şu anda Filistinliler üzerine düşeni yapıyorlar. Peki biz ne yapıyoruz? dünyayı aslında sadece etik bir üstünlük değil bence, tüm dünyaya karşı da dirilten bir şey bu. Bedenlerini ortaya koyarak yaptıkları şey. Bunun medyada daha orada sadece Filistinlilere, Gazze'lilere karşı yapılan bir şey yok. Tüm insanlığa karşı, kutsallara karşı yapılan bir saldırı var. Oradaki Hristiyanların da bu mabetlere yapılan şeyleri daha ciddi bir şekilde dünyaya duyurmaları, medyadan duyurmalarının tüm dünyayı harekete geçirme noktasında daha etkili olacağını düşünüyorum. Bu konuda çalışmalar var mı? Bunları merak ediyorum. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Biz teşekkür ederiz. Mikrofonu beyefendiye geçirebilir miyiz?
Assalamu alaikum.
Aleykümselam.
This is Muhammad Gannam. I'm international relations master graduate from Istanbul Gidik University. I'm Palestinian from Jenin. Actually, I have one comment and two questions to my professors, Dr. Khalid and Dr. Siham and Dr. Khalid, and thank you for sure for your efforts. In addition to what Dr. Khalid mentioned about the Muslim and Christian suffering, I would like to add something about the Palestinian Jewish living in Nablus, which is real Jewish, called Samiriyun, living in Nablus in the top of Jerzim mountain. They also suffering from the occupation. I remember that in the first of Tufan al-Aqsa, they closed the checkpoint and prevent enter and go out for 5 days or 6 days. I'm not sure about the days, but also suffering the Palestinian Jewish, and we are living together. We are living with the same rights. We are living with each other without any problems, and they also suffering like we are suffering. And the other questions about for Dr. Karim and also for Dr. Khalid about the obstacles we faced as in popular resistance and other type of resistance when we will have a comprehensive resistance strategy for our resistance. I just see that we are depend on reaction resistance. We need a strategy. We need a comprehensive strategy to enhance our resistance, to get our freedom, and to get achievements in the future, inshallah. And when we will have a new leadership, a new leaders, a new youth leaders, when we will produce our new leaders, I believe that PLO our representative, and we need a new leadership in PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. We need an elections for National Council. It's I believe in this choice we can produce a new leadership instead of what we say. We don't know anything what happened let me see under the table. We just know in the future. Maybe I can mention the Oslo agreements. Maybe we know about the Oslo agreements when it signed. We don't have any choice. We don't have anything to choice as a Palestinians. We need to be on the table as a Palestinians and as a youth Palestinians. And in the last of my contribution, I would like to say we will continue our resistance in all means to get our freedom, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question and contribution. One other question, two other questions.
İran'dan Yahya ben. İstanbul Üniversitesi'nde lisans öğrenciyim. Sorum size olacak hocam.
Bana mı?
Evet.
Okay.
Yıllardır Filistin ve İsrail arasındaki çatışma hepimiz farkındayız ve şimdi ise farkındaydık ve şimdi ise farkındayız. Ancak 7 Ekim gibi başlayan savaşların neticesinde bir takım toplantılar, mitingler, konuşmalar başlamış oluyoruz. Ve tabii gittikçe bunları bitirip ve bu meseleyi tamamen unutuyoruz. Filistin meselesi bence kalıcı bir çözüme kavuşana kadar hepimizin her gün oturup düşünmemiz, konuşmamız gereken bir şey. Her gün. İnsani yardımlardan bahsediyoruz. Bilmem mesela Türkiye, İran, Mısır gibi ülkeler bu kadar tıbbi malzeme, bu kadar insani yardım ya bu sayede öğrenci burslandırmışlar. Gerçekten bizim yapabileceğimizin bütün her şey bu kadar mı acaba? Bunu soracağım sizden. Buradan pek çok ülkenin cesaret edemediğin ve yapamadığın bir şeyden bahsetmek istiyorum. Güney Afrika'nın yaptığın, Brezilya'nın yaptığın şeyden bahsetmek istiyorum. Ve bu iki ülkeyi kutlamak istiyorum. Gerçekten çok büyük bir şey başardılar, yaptılar Filistin için. Dün Filistin İngiltere Büyükelçisi şeyden bahsetti. Amerika'nın bu savaşın durdurabildiğinden bahsetti. Bence biz Filistin'in sevenleri ve düşünenleri bireyler olarak birleştiğimizde yani bizim yapamadığımız hiçbir şey kesinlikle kalmayacak diye düşünüyorum. Ve son sözüm de bu, ben İsrail'e bir ülke olarak hiçbir zaman kabul etmedim ve hayatım sonuna kadar kabul etmeyeceğim. Teşekkür ederim. Sağ olun.
Thank you for the questions and contributions. I think we must begin to answer. Kerim Hocam, you are waiting for a lot of time. I want to start with you. I think you heard about the questions, or you can make your extra final contributions, share with our guests your final ideas. Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear the question. You hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes, thank you. I hear the questions. When I talk about the tactics like takbir and firecracks and others, I didn't mention them as signal tactics. I mentioned them in we can call that same strategy to confront the outposts in particular places, not in general, not in confront the general settlement project. I was referring to a specific place in the Beta village, which which outpost settlement was established there. So the youth and the people of the village resist the existence of this outpost in their land by what I called and mentioned in the presentation night confusion or night time disruption. Irbat Layla, I was talking about this aspect of resistance. Anyway, I think it's not enough. All these tactics and manners of resistance as popular resistance is not enough. As you know, every occupation and colonial regime didn't live by these means or tactics. Always there was an armed struggle and violence which imposed the colonial regime to live. Without the armed struggle and the mass struggle from the people, the colonial regime will not leave. They will stay and can deal with these tactics of popular resistance. Even the so-called peaceful resistance, like in India or South Africa, they also used the armed struggle or armed resistance. But there was a combination between the peaceful means and the armed means. So in the other question I heard, when I think the question was why the popular resistance can't be turned into a strategy or complete strategy. I think, and anyway, there is a saying, there is no revolution without revolutionary leadership. As you know, in the West Bank, we have the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority cooperate with the occupation and fight the resistance and the armed resistance in the West Bank and the other means of resistance. So I don't think we can turn the resistance into a mass resistance or a common or popular resistance because the absence of the leadership which believe in resisting the occupation and get rid of it. And thank you.
Thank you. Siham Hocam, you can continue.
Thank you. I want to go to the redefinition of words, especially terrorism. So it's very clear. A terrorist is one who terrorizes people. And in the context of Israel-Palestine, you can see who is the terrorist. Even though it's really clear by definition, by dictionary, you cannot pin that they will call upon anti-Semitism, Jewish-hating people, even self-hating Jews, those Jews who speak against Zionism and the occupation. So it's not about redefining words. It's overcoming the psychological barriers for those who listen, finding a new discourse, finding a new way of delivering the message to the unpreached. So creating a platform, it will, like in the way that things are now, will only bring people that are like-minded, that support the cause, that support the same things. But the challenge is to create a platform that is being seen and heard and maybe even participated in by the ones who are against, having that safe space of tolerance to also to listen to the different and diverse opinions so we can build a factual narrative that can be carried. We carry our narratives through songs like you heard yesterday, through telling stories from grandfather to grandson. So we're more of a narrating people, if you would. And we can find a way transformative storytelling is one way. Like what Mads was saying, people coming and carrying the stories from their own perspective, how they felt, their own experience. It helps other people to relate to a personal aspect in that instead of listening to the news. So word of mouth, diverse platforms is the way to go, I think, in that aspect. And not only academics, I would say, but also practitioners' input as well is very important.
Thank you. Hocam?
I'd like to start with where Dr. Mats joined both the ideas together, and I think all of us need to challenge, resist each one wherever they are, and push the limits so a change can actually take place in our countries and in the idea of solidarity with Palestine. And the idea that was suggested yesterday and repeated again, evidence-based solidarity, I think there is enough actually that supports this case from a legal case, from human rights, from every angle that you look at it. Actually, there is sufficient to challenge the Zionist narrative at every corner. With the question that you were raising, the problem is, as was said, this is the most just cause with the worst lawyers, the case of Palestine, that there is not enough coverage of everything that is being done. We are watching this for the first time in human history, live on our screens, watching a genocide unfold. And the impotence of the world is incredible. The world is not able to put one glass of water into Gaza without the permission of the Israelis. You're not able to take the sick out of Gaza without the permission of the Israelis. This level and the complicity of Western governments, with all the pressure that is put on Western governments, their complicity, I think, is what makes it even worse. But this is in the UK, where I've lived for a very long time. This is being challenged, but it is still needs a lot to be able to challenge this. And I agree with what was mentioned by Siham on this, that the use of anti-Semitism, and this going back to your question, redefining things, the problem is they still play this game. Anti-Semitism is equal to anti-Zionism. And I've had this discussion in so many different places, and it is a big problem. And they use the West anti-Semitism, as was mentioned by the Turkish president, is not a problem in this part of the world. It was never a problem. As you mentioned, the Jews in Palestine lived side by side. You hear Avi Schleim talking about himself growing up in Iraq with his family, and the Zionist ideology pushing it into a different direction and forcing Jews to be Zionists when most of the Jews were actually anti-Zionist. Not just those in Nablus, but also looking at Jews, anti-Zionist Jews in Jerusalem and across the world. These voices need to be heard more. And actually their effect, living in Scotland and talking to someone calling us anti-Semitic for standing for Palestine, and then my Scottish colleague told me, speak to this woman, tell her your story, how your family was expelled from Palestine and so on. I told her, she was not convinced. And we had a Jewish anti-Zionist professor with us. She spoke to her for a few minutes and she turned around. She thought, you're all anti-Semitic. And this guilt of the Holocaust in Europe, together with weaponizing anti-Semitism, actually drives people away from this. So I agree that we need to redefine, but sometimes you have to force your narrative. Redefining and within, unfortunately, academia. We have a symposium in 2 months on Zionism and academia, pressures, fears, and challenges here in Turkey. And this is a big problem. You see how they got rid of rectors of university for standing not for Palestine, just for not allowing the Zionist narrative to move forward in the United States, and yes, to spread the Zionist propaganda. On the question on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and what is happening and the interfaith issue, what is happening is an attack on every religion in Palestine. And Israel tries to claim itself as a democracy when, as Stephen Sizer puts it, Israel cannot be a democracy. It only can be a democracy for the Jews, where the others are second class or third class citizens, and does not include the Palestinians. And this idea of pushing a one-state solution is something that Israel does not want. Israel does not want a two-state solution. Israel wants this land, and you've heard the extremist views of their ministers talking about human animals and dehumanizing Palestinians on the one side, and claiming that this land, you need to cleanse, ethnically cleanse everyone out of this land. They see everyone who is not part of this narrative as the enemy, in a sense. And these attacks are, there is not enough coverage of what is happening. We will see in the month of Ramadan attacks on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. This is now certain within the Israeli cabinet. This is going to be, we've seen it since the 7th of October and before the 7th of October, and it's not going to stop. And this symbol for one, Muslims, and two, for Palestinians, whether Muslim or Christian, it has become a Palestinian symbol for those in Palestine, and it is a symbol for the Ummah at large. And I think a lot more needs to be done to expose the real face of Zionism, and I think there is a shift. The Zionist propaganda is not working on this issue. Two other points. I will. I agree with this idea of the ethical superiority, but I agree with what Karim was saying. All the tactics that we are doing is not enough. Seeing the people massacred in Palestine, in Gaza, and in the West Bank, what we're doing, we are failing as humanity, we are failing as the Ummah, and we are failing Palestine, even in every sense. And we need to stop making excuses to this idea of sustainability. How can we sustain this? In order to end this, we were saying this at the start, this war will come to an end, and Gaza will drop out of our agenda until the next war. But this war seems to be never ending. And even with the war going on, Gaza is dropped off the agenda. And this is a disaster. People are becoming desensitized to what is happening in Palestine. And this is a major problem. And I think in terms of psychology and how to keep this, and I think the examples that are mentioned, personal stories, keep this alive. You heard the name of Hind. The coverage over Hind got a lot of coverage. Unfortunately, we are not numbers as Palestinians, but to the world, now 35,000, when it becomes 50,000 or 100,000, these are just numbers. And breaking them down to stories, I think, helps us get away from this idea, but we need to be able to sustain it. And we need to find ways, and this fitting with the last question, we do not have a strategy. And this is the worst. The Palestinians do not have a strategy for resistance. The Palestinians do not have a strategy for the liberation. And this, I'm talking about it, both sides of the identity of Palestinians. Neither the PLO has a strategy, nor does, unfortunately, Hamas have a strategy for deliberation. And let me take it a step further. Unfortunately, I feel the Palestinian leadership is complicit in the current genocide in Gaza. And I say this with a heavy heart, seeing Palestinians attacked by Palestinian police in Ramallah or across the West Bank. This is something that I keep getting told, we don't need to show our dirty laundry in front of everyone, but with the complicity of the Palestinian leadership. This is a leadership that's, as you said, there is no elections. The last time we talked about an election, Israel said Jerusalem will not be included, and they warned Mahmoud Abbas, if election takes place, then the resistance side will win. The Islamic, because people have had enough. They've tried Oslo, and it was a failure in every sense. And in this sense, the Palestinian leadership does not represent the Palestinian people anymore. And this, if we just talk about this and how we can replace and the voices of the youth, the problem is every time the youth raise up, they are assassinated either by Israel or they are imprisoned by the Palestinian Authority. They do not want alternative voices. And this needs the forms of resistance and showing the real face of the occupation and those who are complicit with the occupation, including Arab states, who are completely complicit, to a stage where, as Gaza is dying, we are giving Israel, unfortunately, lines of survival, whether, unfortunately, through trade, through Turkey, or through Jordan, or through Dubai, or through Egypt. It is a disaster, the situation we are in. Let me finish by saying that we need to develop a comprehensive strategy, and maybe people on the ground are developing their own strategies. You saw in Nablus, you saw in Jenin, the young people are developing their own strategies of resistance, putting everything, all the leadership aside. And they are coming together to resist the occupation. They're doing it at their level. I think our responsibility is to develop an international, because we cannot tell them what to do and what not to do. It is not our place. But let us develop an international resistance strategy against this Zionist occupation. Let's make the word Zionist back to its racist ideology in the world. People do not take pride in saying, I am a Zionist, like Joe Biden or the others who do this, and challenge them. And I think the only way we will succeed is to challenge the Zionist narrative at every corner and to lift up our expectations from the governments, push the governments further to the maximum, and to keep pushing ourselves as individuals and also NGOs to make sure that this will never happen again, inshallah.
Hocam, I just want to add one thing as an answer to my young friend. He was asking that we, as other countries, members or citizens, remembering Palestine for a while and then forgetting them. And you said the same thing. It is true, maalesef, we must handle this issue separately, according to me, in another session. I want to say only one thing. We are thinking resistance as a goodness for other people about whom we are talking. This is the false consciousness. Resistance is our responsibility to be able to stay as a human being, we have to resist. It is our responsibility. It is our job as a Muslim and as a human being. Yani. We are not doing something for the Palestinians. We are doing something from the humanity, from our holistic continuation as an honorable human being. I wanted to say this and say thank you for all of you, for the listeners, for the speakers, for Kerim. He left, I think, the Zoom. Thank you for this perfect meeting. Welcome again. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.